If the anime Imouto Sae Ireba Ii or A Sister Is All You Need rings any bells for you at all, it's probably this one. You mean that anime with the cursed, god-awful opening that instantly became infamous throughout the anime community? That anime that's only recognizable because of screen caps of this character doing excessively lewd things out of context? Or hell, even with context? And yeah, I mean that anime. But I also mean that anime about light novel authors trying to make their way through the industry while struggling against the very human emotions of longing, inferiority, and jealousy. I mean that anime with one of the most grounded portrayals of the creative process that I've seen in any medium. I mean that anime that demonstrates the hard work and passion that goes into creating the stories that we all love. Welcome to Mid-Tier Marvels, where I give shows that aren't exactly great as a whole the chance to show off the individual things they do very, very well. And today that show is A Sister Is All You Need. A Sister Is All You Need was originally a light novel from the author of Haganai, and it got its anime adaptation in 2017 through Studio Silverlink. The story follows young light novel author Itsuki Hashima, fellow authors Nayu and Haruto, Itsuki's college friend Miyako, and his younger stepbrother Chihiro. Itsuki is a promising novelist, but his largest stumbling block is his obsessive fixation on Imouto or little sister tropes. This fixation causes him to write countless drafts of stories that are far too unpalatable for the general audience, much to the dismay of his editor. I feel obligated to touch on that opening sequence because, as I said in the intro, that's one of the only things that this anime is remembered for. The fake-out opening, which I really can't show much of on YouTube, shows a generic protagonist in a rapid-fire sequence of increasingly uncomfortable situations between him and his doting younger sister. The protagonist presents these events in a very nonchalant way, despite this sequence culminating in, oh my god, in him eating a pair of his younger sister's undergarments for breakfast. This whole sequence is quickly revealed to be a draft of a story that Itsuki is working on, which his publisher furiously and understandably rejects. Now, this whole sequence does its job of being memorable, but it actually serves a very important narrative function. It effectively sets up from the get-go just how delusional Itsuki is with his Imouto fixation. He doesn't see what he has written as being at all strange, despite the fact that it is way more far-flung than even the most out there of anime that he cites as inspiration, such as Oreimo. This delusion is largely played for comedy, even though it's pretty creepy, but its actual function is to give Itsuki an artistic hill to die on. A single aspect of his work that is completely non-negotiable for him, one that he will bend any and all rules to make sure that it appears in the final work. Which makes sense, a lot of really driven creatives have little quirks that it doesn't feel like they're involved if it isn't present. Like a Sawano score without his signature drop, or a Trigger anime without going to space. So deep is his love for little sisters that he doesn't realize how disconnected that love is from his own reality. Despite not having a younger sister of his own, or more probably because he does not have a younger sister upon which to base reasonable standards, he idolizes Imoutos from anime and light novels. In one scene, he claims that he would love a little sister regardless of her personality, even going so far to admit that he would love nothing more than to be berated by the famous tsundere Imouto Kirino from Oreimo. In the same breath, however, he denounces Haruto's little sister as a monster, a disgrace to Imoutos everywhere. Aside from the fact that he is comparing a character to a real person, the catch here is that Haruto's little sister is the embodiment of the stereotypical tsundere Imouto that Itsuki claims to love. She's the closest thing to Kirino in this show, and Itsuki can't stand her. This demonstrates that despite Itsuki's protests, his fixation doesn't really hold water in the real world and is almost entirely tied to fiction. The big double whammy, and I'm gonna start going into some minor spoilers for the series here, so be warned, is that Itsuki actually does have a little sister. His younger stepbrother Chihiro is a doting kid that always helps him cook, helps him around the house, and he generally has Itsuki's best interest in mind. He is everything that Itsuki could want in a little sister, including the fact that Chihiro is actually a girl. For an unstated reason, though most likely tied to Itsuki's overwhelming Imouto fantasies, Chihiro has always pretended to be a boy around Itsuki, who doesn't live with his family. Itsuki is completely blind to the fact that he already has the little sister he has always wanted. His fixation makes him unable to fully appreciate what he already has, which leads us to one of the most prominent themes explored in the show. I'm about to rapid fire some connections here, so try to keep up. So, Haruto is envious of Itsuki's talent for writing, but Itsuki is jealous of Haruto's commercial success and constantly feels inferior in his writing to Nayu. Miyako is envious of all of them for having something they're passionate about. Miyako's empathy towards their endeavors leads Haruto to fall for her, but she likes Itsuki. Except Itsuki likes Nayu, who literally wants nothing at all other than to marry Itsuki, who won't date her because he is jealous of her writing. And all of them are blind to the people who are jealous of what they have because they are too distracted by their own desires. And yeah, all of that sounds like it could be the plot for a drama in its own right, but here's the thing, it is never once played for melodrama. These connections are all shown with a devastatingly anticlimactic nonchalance that makes it more real than any drama. There's a scene where Haruto, who has been trying for a whole day at an amusement park to get close to Miyako, somberly realizes that she actually has feelings for Itsuki. And he comes to this realization as Miyako herself is indirectly bemoaning the fact that Itsuki likes Nayu by encouraging those two to get together. And as if to make matters worse, when he tells Itsuki that he's decided not to go after Miyako yet, Itsuki offhandedly comments that his friend is a coward for not making a move, not understanding that Haruto only made this choice because Miyako has feelings for Itsuki. All of these things in any other anime would be monumental developments that set off arguments, fights, hell, even entire plot arcs. And here, Haruto clenches his fist and brushes it off. And that's it. There's no catharsis, no emotional release, because that's not how things work in the real world. Unsaid feelings and wordless longings, these emotions are incredibly commonplace, yet you don't see them a whole lot in media, mostly because they're not, in a traditional sense, entertaining. There are no climaxes, no fireworks, just silence and regret, and then the world moves on. This anime has scenes like this all over the place, but it never lingers on them. It just gives them their time and then moves on to the next, usually more lighthearted scene. These realistic portrayals of emotions are perhaps their most effective when applied to the creative process shown through the many artists and authors throughout the series. If you have ever had a deadline to meet on anything, I think you can relate to the allure of procrastination. No matter how passionate you are about that thing, there's gonna be a part of it that you just want to brush off. And my god, is there a lot of procrastination in this series, probably more than actual creation. Whether it's Itsuki going on long vacations on the pretense of getting ideas for his work, or Nayu brushing off her deadlines because she's pretty confident that she can probably cram it in at the end, some of this is gonna feel really familiar. I think a solid 3/4 of the time that I said I was writing the script for this video, I was actually screwing around on Amazon looking at lighting equipment so that I could put off actually writing the script, but I could still say that it was all for the video. So yeah, procrastination, that's something I get. These detours, which take up a lot of the show's runtime, are part of the reason that I would classify it as a slice of life before anything else. But they do inevitably tie back to what Itsuki and the others end up creating, much in the same way the detours we take in real life are part of the creative process. A lot of the things that Itsuki sees on his travels do find their way back into his work, even if they're not the things that he set out looking for. But again, if you've ever written anything, you can most likely relate to staring at a blank Word document for hours, getting nothing done, then walking outside, seeing something completely irrelevant, and having an epiphany. You see a brick laying on the side of the road, and then bam, best idea you ever had comes to mind. I don't know, it's magic. Or insanity. And the reward for your effort is the completion of your creation. Because no matter how much you hate the process of creation, if you are passionate about what you are doing, the end result will always be worth it. And it's yours, wholly yours, something that you care about deeply. But when it goes public, that can be a double-edged sword. Haruto's light novel series receives an anime adaptation, and he works countless hours with the production team to get it just right. Then there's an absolutely heartbreaking scene where the group gets together to watch the anime premiere. And while we never see the anime on screen, we are fed reactions through the Twitter feed that Haruto has open. And as the episode progresses, the comments get worse and worse as they all slowly realize that the anime adaptation is just awful. To top it all off, Haruto still has to keep up appearances by tweeting out positive buzz about this anime series that he knows is terrible. This is a real danger of the profession for creatives, knowing that perhaps the most publicized version of your work is not what you had originally envisioned, and often not something that you had control over. Many of the comments that Haruto receives bash his work as a generic cash grab, and he laments the fact that he spent his time pouring his heart and soul into a series that he loved, despite knowing that he was using generic tropes. Writers often write to tropes not because of their commercial viability, but because they're passionate about these kind of stories, despite their oversaturation. And the passion that he has for his work ultimately leads him to redouble his efforts in working on his light novel series and just forget about the anime adaptation. The show's view on this aspect of the creative process is best demonstrated through the series finale. The group plays a board game meant to simulate the life of a light novel author, wherein the goal is to achieve the most happiness points by the end of a set time. The game throws all sorts of hurdles at them, and they stumble over each and every one with seemingly no positives coming for anyone. By the end of the game, everyone has negative happiness points, and the winner ends up being the person who spent the least amount of time trying. Despite this cynical look at their profession, and understanding how realistic it is, all of them go immediately back to working on their own writing, and Miyako even seeks out a position as an editor. That is, I would say, the ultimate message of this show. Shit happens, and it just keeps happening. It won't be as dramatic as you would like, and it'll be twice as painful. And yet, all you can do is buckle down and work hard towards what you love. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge some of the shortcomings of the series, because it does have some. It is on mid-tier marvels for a reason. All of this amazing stuff that I have said about the show takes up maybe 30% of the screen time. The rest is decent enough slice of life fare that kind of borders on product placement. Seriously, this show has a weird thing about spending long amounts of time playing licensed board games and giving shoutouts to very specific alcoholic beverages. And this might be either a plus or a minus depending on the viewer, but the show revels in its own debauchery. Not to the level of the intro sequence by any means, but it definitely has its fair share of excessive lewdness, and it can break up the pace a little bit sometimes. Ultimately, I see this show as nuggets of pure, dazzling gold, swimming in lukewarm gravy. There are things here that you cannot get anywhere else, mixed in with things that you can get everywhere else. But that's what this segment is about, sifting through the gravy to shed light on the gold. I really need a better analogy. If there's a mediocre show that you think has some really awesome elements that you'd like to see highlighted in one of these segments, let me know down in the comments. If you like this video, go ahead and subscribe for more anime content. And until next time, I've been Spoons, and thank you for watching.